Speaking of Georgia, late last night, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law tweeted out that they filed a temporary restraining order against the state of Georgia to count provisional ballots in Gwinnett County. That's one of the places where they have some outstanding ballots. And so Stacey Abrams, her campaign, they've also filed suit against the state of Georgia. And so all kinds of lawsuits being filed left and right. Georgia Secretary of State Robin Crittenden, she has made it clear to all county officials that they should count absentee ballots even if they lack a voter's date of birth, as long as the voter's identity can be verified. Now, remember, that was one of the issues there in Georgia where Brian Kemp, what they were trying to do is essentially lock folks out if they didn't have every single item that is correct. Well, luckily, you have a interim Secretary of State who was doing the right thing when it comes to what's happening there. We still even have reports of people in Georgia and Florida who say that they got their absentee ballots late. And so that's one of the things that's been happening as well. And so just crazy, just madness all over the place. All right, folks, back to our Roland Unfiltered video in just one moment. You heard me talk about our friends at Transatlantic Real Estate who have created a unique investment opportunity that combines legal marijuana and crowdfunding. Now, of course, let that sink in for a second. Think about the growing momentum around legal marijuana in this country. It's been on various ballot initiatives. And if you're an investor, there's never been a better time for you to get in the game. However, as markets grow, so does the barrier to entry, which means it will take millions, if not billions, to invest, not to mention the risk of starting a new venture. That's what makes this opportunity so special. Transatlantic Real Estate is different, and their business model is very simple to understand. They buy land that supports marijuana grow operations and lease it to licensed high-paying tenants. That means that you'll be investing as a landlord of a licensed marijuana farm. The best part, they're using crowdfunding to make it easy for the average person to get in before they take the company public. So for a limited time, you can invest as little as $300 up to $10,000. And look, now remember, you must complete and confirm your application to participate in this opportunity. Now, don't be the person who missed out because you rushed and didn't complete the process. To invest, go to marijuanastock.org. That's marijuanastock.org for you to get in the game and get in the game now. Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video. So let's talk to a couple of folks who have been on top of this in Georgia, Latasha Brown and Cliff Albright. They're co-founders of the group Black Voters Matter. And so, Cliff, I want to go to you first. So, Cliff, I want to go to. Okay, who's I'm going to do first, Latasha or Cliff? Okay, fine. I'll go Latasha first. All right, Latasha, how you doing?
Okay.
Latasha, you there?
I'm well, Roland.
All right.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. And so we've had drama over the weekend. Now the Interim Secretary of State is saying count all the ballots. You name it, all these things have been happening. Where do we stand right now? What happened today with the drama in Georgia?
So what has happened with the lawsuit and what are some of the work that we're working on is to make sure that there is the absentee ballots. The absentee ballots have not been counted. There's over 40,000 that we know of absentee ballots that have not been counted. There are several lawsuits, as you mentioned, one that was filed last night by the Lawyers Committee, and there is a subsequent lawsuit that got filed on Saturday. Well, there was a lawsuit that got filed on Saturday in Daughtry County, and there's a lawsuit that the Abrams campaign is threatening to bring as well. There's several legal actions to be taking place, but right now the biggest issue is around pushing back. There's one court that has actually pushed back one of the election boards in the county. They have 3 additional days to come up with that to complete the vote count using the absentee ballots. And the reason why that's significant is because we know that there's over 40,000 a minimum of 40,000 absentee ballots that are still out currently right now that have not been counted. So how many votes does Stacey Abrams need to pick up to push Brian Kemp under 50.1 to trigger the December 4th runoff? That's 22,000, roughly close to around 22,000 votes are needed. And it's really significant because when you look at the voter suppression and you look at, particularly if Trump firm, that it's very, very likely, that a lot of those votes may be cast, may be Stacey Abrams votes. We don't know. But that's actually just a little over half. So what we're saying, a little under half, that is really important, that those absentee ballots can make the difference. And we really do believe that what it's going to do is push Stacey over the threshold for a runoff election.
And so those are the absentee ballots. Now, when you say those absentee ballots for all of Georgia or for a few counties?
That's for all of Georgia. We don't know the entire number. There's a challenge with some of the absentee ballots because the 40,000 that we're speaking to, those are absentee ballots that specifically have blank by their name. That means that people send an absentee, they requested a ballot, the ballot may be sent back. They either elected not to send it or they sent it and it hasn't been counted. So you can actually go on the Secretary of State website to check what the status of the absentee ballot. Those ballots, the status is blank. So in addition to that, there are other particular counties that have absentee ballots that have not been counted yet. So there's like there's several things that are going on right now. One, there is the finalizing of the provisional ballots. Secondly, there's some counties that were granted additional time to be able to count some of the absentee ballots that are going on. There are these 40,000 absentee ballots that have what is called a blank status right by them, which you don't know if they just weren't processed yet or they just not counted yet or people didn't turn them back in, which is why we've been doing a phone bank to reach out to folks around the absentee ballots. And then there's some ballots that have not been counted yet. So there's multiple things that are going on right now that could absolutely, with her only having a 22,000 vote difference, there's absolutely enough going on right now, enough ballots and votes out right now that can make the difference and push it into a runoff election.
Hey, Cliff, I want to bring you in right now. Again, how important is that phone bank, and what has been the reception from people who have been receiving the phone calls from you guys?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
I said, what has been the reception from folks? How have those phone banks been going? You alerting folks with regards to what they should be doing when it comes to their signature in these ballots?
Yeah, so people have been responding. First of all, people have been really surprised just to find out that their ballot has not been processed. We've had people who have said that they mailed it in plenty of time, like in some cases 2 weeks before Election Day, and yet there still hasn't been processed. We've talked to people who have said that they were told that the ballot was mailed on October 27th to them, but then when they received it, they saw a postmark date of October 29th, and they didn't receive it until the night of November 5th, which made it too late for them to do anything about it. We had one woman who was in Oklahoma at the time of the election. She said she had to request an absentee ballot four times, and never received it. And so we've had people who have said that they never received their ballot, and so they wound up on Election Day actually going to the polling place. And unlike the actual process, which is supposed to be that they are allowed to do a provisional ballot, we've had people say that they were not allowed to do any kind of ballot, provisional or otherwise. In fact, one woman said that the clerks literally ripped up her ballot and would not let her vote. So
Wow.
We've had all kinds of stories from folks who thought that they were that their vote had been counted, and come to find out it has not been counted.
And so what recourse is there? Because again, when you talk about having to ask four times, look, that's certainly troubling.
Exactly. So right now, what the recourse is that we, along a range of other partners here in the state, National Domestic Workers, New Georgia Project, just a range of social justice groups are calling for, and there'll be a rally tomorrow at the Capitol where we are calling for an immediate recount, regardless of the 1% rule or the 50% plus one runoff rule. What we actually have here in Georgia, which a lot of folks haven't talked about, the Secretary of State actually has the discretion to call for a recount under certain situations, even when it's not within that 1%. That 1% margin of victory. And so we are calling on the Secretary of State, and thank God that Brian Kemp is no longer Secretary of State, mainly through the actions of Latasha and the lawsuit that she found. But we are calling on the current Secretary of State to call for an immediate recount so that all of these questions can be explored, so that all of these ballots, absentee, provisional, otherwise, can be counted. And that's the only way we'll really know what the real margin is, and whether or not then we may still wind up going to a runoff. But the only way to get to the runoff is to count all the votes, and the only way to count all the votes is to have an immediate recount.
First of all, what time is that rally and where is it tomorrow?
It's 1 o'clock. It's going to be inside the Capitol. I don't have an exact room, but if you go to the Capitol, there'll be signage. There'll be people there to guide folks. So if you are in the Atlanta area, 1 o'clock at the Capitol tomorrow.
Okay. All right, then. Well, Cliff and Latasha, we certainly appreciate your diligence on this, and certainly we'll see what happens tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you, Roland.
Thank you, Roland.
All right. Thank you so very much. All right, folks, I said earlier that the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, they've been quite busy when it comes to filing lawsuits and trying to get attention and focus on what is happening here. Late last night, Kristen Clark sent out a tweet saying that they were seeking a TRO, a temporary restraining order, when it comes to Gwinnett County. And so we have her. Do we have Kristen, folks? Okay, so in a second, we're going to have Kristen in a second. So I definitely want to talk to her because, again, the lawyers have been quite busy. I want to bring in our panel, obviously, Michael Brown, former DNC Finance Committee member, also Avis Jones, the Weaver leadership strategist, Eugene Craig, of course, with the, you still with the Maryland Republican Party, or?
I'm still Republican, but, you know,
right.
I'm out of
but
leadership.
You work with the party, but out of leadership, got it, all right. Eugene Craig organization, but Maryland Republican as well. So lawyers are quite busy. Mike, I want to go to you. I mean, we see this constantly, again, how busy they are in dealing with taking folks to court because of the election drama. We keep in Florida, just seems to be an annual rite of passage.
And that seems to be the recourse that we have to go to, and that's what our system is set up. And by the way, before I continue to answer the question, Roland, obviously to all our veterans out there, happy Veterans Day, and thank you for your service. But the court is our kind of, our last line of defense. If the folks in political office that actually determine what the rules are, and then they change the rules as we're in the same process of election time or after election day, it's important that we have a recourse, which is court. The problem with the court are, depending on what that state does, are they appointed by the governor? Are they elected judges? Are they going to have a political dog in that fight? So until we have kind of a more uniform way of how we vote in this country, I think we're going to continue to have these problems. And as you mentioned, it's a rite of passage every time we have elections in Florida. Or, frankly, every time there's a person of color or a black person on the ballot, there always seems to be a problem.
And it's constant drama, Avis. I mean, again, and luckily this interim Secretary of State is leading with some common sense. And for all the people last week who kept saying, oh, it's too late, they're wasting their time throwing Brian Kemp out, now you see why Latasha Brown and others filed a lawsuit, because having an interim Secretary of State leads to different decisions being made.
Absolutely. I mean, this is far from over. If there are some 40,000 plus votes that are yet to be counted, and they only need to hit the margin of like 21,000 to force a runoff, then this is far from over. And the decisions that the Secretary of State makes are absolutely critical as to whether or not those ballots are actually counted. So having brought that lawsuit and getting Kemp out of that position was absolutely critical, because we all know that he had, from the very beginning, put his thumb on the scales in his favor, and he would have continued to do so till the end.
Eugene?
Brian Kemp was ready to pull a, hey, we investigated ourselves and found nothing wrong. And Avis is absolutely correct. With the interim Secretary of State, there are going to be decisions made. And I also think that every decision that Brian Kemp made up until his resignation kind of, hangs over this current Secretary of State, where she kind of, to a degree, has to give some leeway to outstanding ballots and making sure that, there's at least the appearance that every single vote is being counted and that, every single voter or vote is being respected. So I do think this is far from over. I think, it probably will get pushed to a runoff, especially if this new batch of 40,000 absentee votes are included.